All right. What's up, everyone? I always say impromptu live stream, but it kind of is. It's unexpected. I've been talking strictly Knicks for the last 2 to 3 weeks, and for good reason. They're my number one team. They're, locked into this playoff run, and, they obviously have a massive game, the biggest of my lifetime tonight. And you know what? I need a little reprieve from the seriousness of the stakes that will occur tonight in Madison Square Garden for Game 6 of the Eastern Conference semifinals between the Knicks and the Celtics. Again, the biggest Knicks game, maybe the biggest game for me ever played, considering how long it's been and how little success that I've seen with my own two eyes with the Knicks. So again, little reprieve here. We're going to be talking Mets-Yankees Subway Series. Listen, the stakes are high with that too. Obviously nowhere near what it is for Knicks-Celtics Game 6 and, by default. But in a little, joining me, friend of the program, we had him on right before Juan Soto signed with the Mets, my good friend Gabe Herz, who actually today announced that he will be an analytics contributor for Metsmerized, a very popular Mets blog. So, it's not just a friend of the program now. It's not just one of my good friends. It's someone who's actually reputable within the Mets community. So that's cool as well. Because I was going to say, you may ask me, Bryce, why do you have a friend on? Gabe is clearly one of the smartest people that I've ever met. Very smart when it comes to baseball and specifically the Mets. So we're going to be talking to him in just a second here. But listen, this is a very intriguing matchup between the Yankees and the Mets. Juan Soto makes his return to the Bronx. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into, what to look for in this series. And obviously, Gabe is going to come on here and tell you what to look for with the Mets and how everything's been going. I haven't talked the Mets much. Again, as I said, I've been talking Knicks for the last month and a half. So that has obviously felt like the only thing I've been doing, and it kind of is. Besides Giants, I talk Giants. I'm one Giant step. Shameless plug. All right, let's do it. Gabe is here. What's up, Gabe?
How you doing, Bryce?
Long time no speak. It's been a minute. I know you've given me shit about not coming on. Well, here you go. Now that you're a reputable source within the Mets community, congratulations on becoming an analytics contributor for Metsmerized. It's a long time coming, and it's very deserved.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. Happy to start, just going to, put out a couple pieces every month, just a nice platform. It's a great website, great publication with a lot of very smart people. So I'm excited to start contributing there.
Yeah, I just said, you're not just a friend of the program now. Now you're, again, a reputable source within, not source, but writer within the community. So, it's not just a friend, because I guarantee you I get a lot of shit for that if I just brought a friend on and now you actually, do something that's real. So, all right, let's get into this. Let's talk about this series. And I can't just do something without talking about the Knicks. So I'll get your thoughts on that after this. But this is more important, for the time being. Again, as I said, I need a little reprieve from the most important game ever played in my lifetime tonight. So let's talk about something a lot less important, but important now, Mets-Yankees. So Juan Soto makes his return to the Bronx. As mentioned, that's the most important storyline here. Tell me a little bit about what you're expecting from Juan Soto here in this series.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously, understandably, right, a lot of Yankee fans' feathers have been ruffled by Soto's departure across town. And, I just think, right, I think that there's been a lot, made of his performance, especially in New York media circles, just coming on the heels of signing the largest, professional contract ever. But yeah, I just think Soto's going to be Juan Soto, right? I think we briefly discussed this earlier. He's been hot since the start of May. He started the month off with a multi-home run game. He's been great. He's got more walks than strikeouts. He's leading the team in runs scored. He's on pace for 30-plus home runs. Juan Soto, at the end of the day, is Juan Soto, whether he's hitting 250, 260, 280. He's getting on base. He's drawing his walks. He's doing his thing. Defense in right field is a little suspect, certainly. But, yeah, look, I mean, do I think that he's going to feed off of the atmosphere at Yankee Stadium? I'd be lying if I said I didn't. I'm expecting him over the course of the 3-game series to hit at least one bomb. Yeah. But we'll see. I don't think he's going to go on some biblical run where he hits 700. But I also don't think he's going to go 0 for 18.
Yeah, something else we discussed before is, the New York media kind of calling out Soto and saying, he's going to start this amazing run with this series. And I did think that would be the case, but Juan Soto has, the last I checked, he is a 1.077 OPS in the month of May. So it's not like he's this is Juan Soto now. This isn't first month Juan Soto. All the issues, what Mets Reddit has been saying about. I'm not even going to get into it. I think it's hilarious, but the non-binary stuff, like this is all in the rearview mirror. And now he's having a regular Juan Soto month. So I can't understand that casual talking point of Juan Soto sucked. He's terrible, but his OPS is now 860. All right, so like he's not terrible. He's becoming Juan Soto. He's someone who obviously went across town with, as you said, the biggest contract in sports history. There was a lot of pressure that came with that. And it's also like getting reacclimated to another team and another organization. So I think that the pressure has kind of been taken off from here, that obviously had to live up to that biggest contract in sports. So listen, I think that my prediction is Juan Soto will absolutely go deep. I can't bet against my teams. It's something that I've done in the past as kind of like an emotional hedge. I can't do it, but like, I really think the line for Soto to hit a home run in one of these 3 games is very intriguing. What do you think the reception is going to be for Juan Soto at Yankee Stadium?
I think I'm expecting a ton of boos, right? There's been a lot of talk, and granted, a lot of the talk on social media are coming from these anonymous troll accounts, which these days kind of dominate the X landscape, for better or worse, likely for worse. But there's a lot of talk about, especially in right field, the bleacher creatures. It's a big part of the atmosphere at Yankee Stadium. And obviously, Soto's right there with an earshot. They're going to give him an earful. Like, there's going to be a lot of boos. I understand it. I've been at some games where there's been a lot of emotions. 2016, my 15th birthday, I went to the game where Noah Syndergaard threw at Chase Utley and got, thrown out of the game, that famous hot mic game. And stadium was booing Utley like I had never seen before, and he ended up hitting 2 homers, including a grand slam in the 8th inning. So I'm expecting a ton of boos. I think a lot of Yankee fans feel that Soto owed them something, which is something that I completely disagree with. But not only did he leave, but he left to go to the team that has been in the shadow of the Yankees for practically their entire existence, other than sometime in the 80s. So definitely going to be a lot of boos, a lot of hostility, but Juan is expecting it, and I think he's going to feed off of it. And I don't think it's going to be, anything that he can't handle.
Yeah. As a practical Yankee fan, I think a lot of fans get caught up in the, their emotions when it comes to their sports teams. Like some of my best friends, a few of them that, look at this in such a positive lens and such a, I don't want to say delusional, but it is delusional. Like there are takes that they throw out there that I don't think are based in reality. And when I come with the practical, realistic take, they kind of shit all over me. And I'm like, listen, like this is the case. Something that I harped on millions of times last year is, you could be so happy about Aaron Judge having one of the best seasons again in Yankees history, but what is he going to do in the postseason? He's going to suck. And guess what happened? He sucked again. So it's like, listen, you got to be practical about your team. You got to be practical about a guy like Juan Soto. If I was at the game, would I boo him? No. I don't think that he owed the Yankees anything. They traded for him for 1 year. I said, you got to lock him up. You got to get him. At the end of the day, the Yankees did everything they possibly could within their their boundary and their budget. Like they went way above what they thought they were going to go. So I think that that's the reason why you didn't see that big of an uproar when it comes to the Yankee fan. Like there were obviously people who were very upset and for good reason that he went to the Mets and frustrated at him. But again, at the end of the day, he didn't owe them anything. He was with the Yankees for a year. The Mets came with a Godfather offer, an offer you can't refuse. He took it. And 16 years for $805 million as compared to 16 years, $760 for the Yankees. Like, I get it. I understand. Like, you get the extra, one less year, but either way, you're getting $45 million more. So it's a lot more AAV. I don't know. I just think that the fans get so, they take things personal, Yankees fans. And there's obviously the dichotomy between the Yankee fan and the Met fan right now. And I get it. I understand because of this signing and because of, kind of like the stature of both the teams within the city. But I don't know. I think that it would be more beneficial for the Yankees to not boo him, because if they give him no reaction, it doesn't give him as much fuel to go off and hit 6 home runs in the series. I don't know. I'm different than the normal Yankee fan. I'm different than the normal Knicks fan. I don't know. I think that's just me, but I don't know. I just don't see why you boo the guy. Again, he doesn't owe them anything.
Well, look, it's like and I don't mean this in a disparaging way, even though it's going to come off as so. It's the Yankee fan, especially in recent times, right? They're kind of like the spoiled kid who had never been told no. And there was this belief that
I think the last 5 or 6 years has kind of like turned that, on its head. Like, I don't think that that's the case anymore. It was maybe in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, early 2010s, but ever since, I don't think it's the same anymore.
Right. Well, what I'm saying is that this was the first time, right? People had said, going into the free agency negotiations, that the Yankees, they carry obviously the global recognition, the 27 championships, are the most iconic franchise in MLB and probably North American sports. Like, I'm not disagreeing with any of that. There was a lot of dialogue going around that they had never been outbidded. They've never lost out on a free agent that they truly wanted to get. People would reference Robinson Cano going to the Mariners as like the closest substitute to the situation, but people would say that they don't want. They don't want. But so Soto and right, obviously it's interesting because the Mets, in the last few years with Steve Cohen owning the team, the situation, the circumstances for the franchise have changed drastically. And a lot of it is very new to Mets fans. I'm still conditioned to kind of think that the team is operating the way it did for the first 20 years of my life, which was how the Wilpons ran the team. So, this was the first time, right? We're talking about the largest free agency negotiation in baseball history. This was the biggest deal ever. And the Mets and the Yankees effectively went toe to toe, and the Mets won. And I think that's a lot to grapple with. If Soto went to the Yankees, I would have been bummed out of my mind for sure. But the fact that he had played for the Yankees and then went to the Mets, obviously it rubs a lot of salt in the wound. But like you said, I totally agree. This was a guy who was acquired via trade by the Yankees. He came unwillingly, the trade. He didn't say, I want to play for the Yankees. He embraced his time with the Yankees. He had 1 year guaranteed, and he gave it his absolute all, willed the team, helped the team propel them to the World Series, had, one of the most important at-bats in recent Yankees franchise history in sending the Yankees to the World Series. That at-bat actually might be like a top 5 at-bat of all time. It was just an incredible display of ability and dominance and the magnitude of the hit. I'm just saying, pound for pound, that at-bat was incredible. But, he never indicated, he never led the Yankees on. There was no indication. People like to read in between the lines and try to listen to these Spanish podcasts that Soto wanted to be a Yankee, or Soto, did this, or Soto did that. It's all just like the guy made a decision. The decision's for 15 years. There's an opt-out after 5, but the Mets will, in all likelihood, nullify the opt-out by just adding $5 million to the rest of each year for the rest of the contract. And people got to start to move on.
Yeah, I get that. And I think a lot of Yankees fans have, because you look at this roster, and obviously they made some big changes in the offseason, one of them being like the replacement lefty bat was Cody Bellinger, who sucked. He sucks. He's terrible right now. He's got an OPS of 688, which, listen, I expected more from him. I expected him to be the type of player to rise to the occasion of being a Yankees, not Yankees legend, but, a serviceable Yankee, someone who plays well under the bright lights. He did it in LA, won an MVP. Like, that's the type of player. And again, he's not the same player as he used to be. He obviously there's a lot to him as a player. He's a great outfielder, great fielder, but right now he's not hitting well. So that was one of their big moves. The other being Paul Goldschmidt, who has been this revelation, man. Paul Goldschmidt has been unbelievable. He's probably one of the best acquisitions, like not long term, but like, one of those stopgaps. Like, you obviously could look at a guy like Josh Donaldson. You could look at a few other players the Yankees acquired that obviously suck. But you look at Paul Goldschmidt. He's been a really solid piece. So, listen, I don't think anyone would have been able to fill the void of losing Juan Soto. But I feel like there are a few guys here that have again, not filled the void, but have done a good enough job to come close to that. Because if you look at Paul Goldschmidt and Cody Bellinger, their WARs equal what Juan Soto's is this year at 1.7. 1.3 for Goldschmidt, 0.4 for Cody Bellinger. I don't think anyone expected them to combine for that. Obviously, the season as it goes on, Juan Soto is going to surpass that and probably surpass both of them. But I don't know. I know you're not a Yankees guy, but what do you make of what these guys have done here with Brian Cashman's acquisitions in the offseason?
Yeah, I'll give credit where credit's due. The Yankees look like a very complete team, and I think that a lot of the moves that Cashman made in the offseason were strong moves, right? We'll talk about Bellinger first. I had voiced this to you when they first acquired him, right? We're talking about a guy whose bat speed numbers were declining. He had a down year in Chicago. The Cubs, smart front office team that is primed to, win the NL Central and possibly make a deep run in the playoffs. They wanted to give him away for free. Everyone was like, "Oh, we got him for just Cody Poteet." Like it was really because they just wanted to get off the contract. And granted, it's super early. It's May 16th. Like at this point this year, the Mets looked like they were going to sell every single piece they had off at the deadline. So we got to give it some time, and we got to let Bellinger get at least 2 full months under his wing before we make a, real, claim to his tenure in New York and his future in New York. But yeah, Paul Goldschmidt's been a complete revelation. Will he hit 350 for the rest of the year? No, but he certainly has given the Yankees 45 games of more than they could have imagined, in this 45-game stretch of value for 1 year of Paul Goldschmidt has already made the contract worth it. I think that opening up the playing time for Ben Rice, who I am a big fan of Ben Rice, I think the power is legitimate. I think the underlying numbers indicate that everything he's doing is legitimate. He showed flashes of being this type of hitter last year and obviously struggled, which a lot of players do in their first, even second, third cups of coffee in the majors.
Yeah, like a Judge.
Yeah. So, I buy Ben Rice as a 27 to 33 home run bat when he fully matures at the major league level. And he's a lefty bat. And the only thing I'm selfishly hoping is that they let him catch a few more games so I could get that catcher eligibility in fantasy, because I have him in a couple leagues. And obviously what they did with the rotation, Max Fried has been incredible. I've watched a lot of his starts. He's been great for them. We'll see him take on the Mets Sunday Night Baseball this upcoming week. Fried's not going to run him 1 ERA the whole year, but is he going to run a sub-3? Probably. Like, he looks like a legitimate ace on a playoff team. And considering what happened with Garrett Cole in the offseason and the unfortunate circumstances surrounding that, you needed someone like Max Fried to step up and pretty much pitch the best baseball of his career, which he's given. And Rodon, as much as I waver back and forth on how much I like Rodon, he's looked like at least a very solid 3, maybe a 2 this year. At times he's looked like a 1. So that's good. And Clark Schmidt's back, and I'm a fan of Clark Schmidt. And so they've got some pieces there. Devin Williams hasn't been inspiring, obviously, but you've got Luke Weaver, and that's just the nature of relief pitchers, right? They're extremely feeble in nature, and the volatility is insane. Edwin Diaz ran a 6 ERA almost in his first year in Queens, and 3 years later he put up one of the best relief pitcher seasons ever. So it's like, this is just what happens with relief pitchers, but they've got enough juice in the pen that overall makes it a pretty strong bullpen. So yeah, I mean, there's no denying, right? The Yankees have a good team here, and this is with Jazz, who didn't look good at all. He's on the shelf, and obviously I was watching late night that game in Seattle, and the devastating injury to Oswaldo Cabrera, who I know is kind of beloved by the fan base and in the locker room, despite maybe not being the best player on the team, right? He's obviously losing him. Stings for the meanwhile. Volpe's looked better, although Volpe still gives me hesitancy. But yeah, and then obviously like Trent Grisham too has been like the second coming of Barry Bonds. That's not going to continue either. But once again,
you never know.
Once again, it doesn't really matter, right? If Trent Grisham gives you 40 games of what he's been so far this year, it's like, that is just so much more than you ever thought you were going to get out of Trent Grisham. At the end of the day, you win a division by 2-3 games. Like, this is what matters. The whole season matters, and when players can contribute in pockets of the season, that's really all that matters.
Listen, I know you're a busy man. Your Slack is going off the charts right now. But let's discuss someone that we have to discuss, and someone who we listen. This was a big deal at the time when he was signed. You were incessant about it. Like, dude, you would have shut up about it. And You were right. I'll give you. You got to give credit when credit is due. And I think you know where I'm going here. It's Clay Holmes. The big pitching acquisition for the Mets this offseason. They obviously came out and said, "Hey, we want to move Clay Holmes to the starting rotation." And here he is with a 3.14 ERA. What have you seen from Clay Holmes this year?
Yeah, first I just think that hopefully at the end of this year, the narrative, which is going to happen every single offseason around, oh, David Stearns is dumpster diving for starting pitching. This pitching staff looks terrible on paper. I hope that narrative dies at the end of this year, because this is not just what David Stearns has now done going on to his second year in New York, but this is something that he did for 7 years prior in Milwaukee. And Clay Holmes, it obviously, Stearns had a press conference yesterday and said that the credit first goes to the pitchers. But yeah, Clay Holmes, I mean, they identified, obviously Yankee fans have sour opinions on him, despite what I thought from a third-party perspective, he was overall a very solid relief pitcher during his tenure in the Bronx. But yeah, they taught him that kick change. He's throwing that sinker, and he's looked good. Last start was actually his worst outing of the year. He gave up 4 earned to the Pirates, kind of got squeezed on a strike 3 call that ended up resulting in a 2-run homer later in the inning. But, I just think that Clay's looked good. Something that I can have concerns about going deeper into the year is just how are we going to manage his workload. Obviously, the guy threw 60 innings last year.
Yeah.
And
he's almost at that. He's at 48 right now. He's almost there.
Yeah,
it's great. And 2 more starts, and he's where he was last year, and he's going to pitch another 25 times, maybe, and 20 times this year. So yeah, I don't know how he's going to fare with that.
Exactly. So we'll see. I mean, I think that's the biggest concern for a guy transitioning from a relief pitcher to a starting pitcher in that first year. Clay said that he wanted to get up to 150 innings. Like, that would be great. The Mets would be very happy with that.
I surpass that.
Exactly. So we just got to see how he scales. There have been guys, Michael King, Seth Lugo, have been very successful at this transition the last couple of years. We'll see. Clay, the strikeout numbers have been good. Everything's been good. First couple outings, he threw too many balls, but he's settling in there. And look, not just Clay Holmes, Griffin Canning, who was arguably the worst starting pitcher in baseball last year, led the American League in earned runs allowed, came over. I was skeptical. I defend David Stearns to my grave every single move he makes. And I even tweeted when we signed Griffin Canning that if the Mets were able to extract any positive value out of this guy, that I would build the Stearns statue myself. And the guy has been our best pitcher. It's incredible. He's pitching backwards. He's relying on his off-speed stuff first, and then he's coming in with that below-average fastball. But when you can sequence the pitches better, everything plays off of each other, and it's made him a lot better pitcher. And the Mets pitching staff as a whole this year, you've been
unbelievable, dude. Unbelievable. Definitely the best in baseball. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I mean, you look at these stats, like, 3 guys have an ERA over 3, and it's 3.14, 3.05, and 3.15. Like, that's insane. I don't know how sustainable that is, but when you look at the Mets record, obviously at 28 and 16 being number 1 in the NL East, the credit is, the credit needs to be given to the pitching staff, to Stearns' credit. I don't know how sustainable that is. Give me your biggest surprise this year besides the 2 guys you mentioned. Who's the one guy you look at and you're shocked at how well they played this year, obviously besides Holmes and Canning?
It's kind of low-hanging fruit, but Pete Alonso. I mean, this is a guy that I spent a large majority of last season arguing that we shouldn't re-sign him, and that the type of player
I disagree. I thought it made too much sense to bring him back.
Right. Let me say my piece here. The type of profile that he was performing to, a 230, 240 hitter with still had that 35 to 40 home run pop, and he was good driving your runs, but he was chasing a lot, he was K'ing a lot, he was not hitting for average. Those were obviously concerning things. And obviously he had a miraculous postseason in that home run against the Brewers. It changed kind of the trajectory of how fans viewed him, and seems like it's changed the trajectory of his career. But it's like, what he's been able to do so far for the first month and a half of this season, and it's like the underlying numbers, everything is just so much better. He's not chasing his approach. He said in an offseason interview that this summer was this winter was the first offseason that he spent learning how to hit, which I thought was like the kind of very interesting, right? He's always known how to hit home runs. The guy's probably been hitting home runs since he was 6 years old, but learning how to hit. And is he going to hit 300 the whole year? Probably not. But if he ends the year hitting 270, 275 with 40 home runs, 120, 130 RBIs, we're talking about, Pete Alonso is one of the top 5 bats in the National League.
Yeah.
And he is going to rightfully earn himself a much larger payday. And I think that it also changes the calculus of how other teams view Pete Alonso, right? Is he viewed as a guy who's hitting in the low 200s with a lot of power, but he's right-handed? Those players typically don't age gracefully. But now all of a sudden he's a guy that can hit for a lot more contact and he's not chasing the ball. Like, that profile is a lot more sustainable. So, I love what Pete's meant for the franchise. Ultimately, the terms that he came back on and everything, I'm in hindsight, I'm extremely grateful that he came back and the Mets and him were able to work it out. And hopefully he can continue it. But that's definitely been, I think my biggest surprise outside of the pitching staff.
You got to think, like, where would this team be without him? Like, what he's able to provide, obviously nowhere near Aaron Judge levels at a 1279 OPS, and probably the best season through May since Barry Bonds. The guy is unbelievable. We could talk about Judge here for hours, but Juan Soto had his best year of his career last year because the guy backing him up was Aaron Judge. So that's why it always made sense to me to bring back Pete Alonso, because what we saw, the potential, him hitting 53 home runs and breaking the rookie record right after Aaron Judge said it. I knew that was within him. Like, I knew that he could have another really good season in terms of pop and in terms of a guy who you didn't necessarily want to face when Soto was up. Like Soto was going to get pitches to hit like he got with Judge, obviously nowhere near that level, but we've seen with Pete Alonso, the over 1,000 OPS, I think he's definitely an MVP candidate at this point. I don't think anyone's doubting that. But I think that's a major benefit for the Mets right now. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. Like, he's been unbelievable. All right, let's. I'm going to talk about this later tonight. I'm going to do a little preview, but I needed to do this. I needed to focus on something else, but obviously this is at the forefront of my mind. It's Game 6 of the Eastern Conference semifinals between the Knicks and the Celtics. You're going to get a lot of what I believe about it again later tonight or over my psychopath tweets. But what are your thoughts going into Game 6 tonight at the Garden?
I've got some friends that are going to be boots on the ground in attendance. I've got my Knicks rally towel behind me from last year's playoffs. Look, I think the dominant strategy in situations like this are to be cautiously optimistic, right? I think that this is a very unique opportunity presented to the Knicks, something that has been very rare, to be able to not only reach the conference finals for the first time since '99, but to be able to
2000, 25 years,
2000, but to win a playoff series in the Garden and against the Celtics, this is. I don't want to say a once in a lifetime opportunity because
it is, dude. It is. We haven't seen it in our lifetimes. It is 100%.
Exactly. I think.
All right, we got that. This is definitely one of your boys, right? Yeah, he says this guy declared the Cavs NBA champions in December. I don't blame you, dude. They looked amazing. They looked incredible.
Yeah, I mean the Cavs, right? I actually was talking about this the other day with one of my friends. That was probably. I consider myself actually my accuracy on sports takes is pretty high, and I'm not just saying that to say that. Yeah. But the Cavs was one of my biggest misses ever, and granted, nobody probably saw them getting absolutely dusted by the Pacers in 5 games. But granted, we'll move that aside. Luke Cornett played out of his mind in the last game. Celtics come out hitting a lot of threes. It's remarkable to me how many of these open looks the Celtics were able to generate.
Yeah, all series. It's not just it wasn't just in Game 5. It's been all series. Games 1 and 2. Celtics just didn't hit them.
Jaylen Brown finally, he had a great game last game. Derek White, Pritchard, I mean, these guys are like lethal. So, look, the Knicks, it was the best first half that they had played all series.
Yeah.
And so that's why it was a bit surprising, to kind of see them, wilter away at the end. And there's an argument to be made, right, that Tibbs could have been a little bit quicker with the substitution in the third quarter, especially the way that, Mitch Rob, I mean, that my biggest takeaway from last game, Mitch Rob was 6 for 6 from the free throw line, and he has just been playing incredibly. But yeah, look, I think that Game 6 home crowd, everyone who's anyone is, the celebrity row is going to be crazy. The atmosphere is going to be ridiculous. There's going to be thousands of people right outside of the arena. Like, it's going to be a fun environment. And I just think that, the Knicks, this is not the most analytical response here, but they might be due. They're due to have some magic get done at the Garden. And I really think there's no other way to think other than to be optimistic that they'll close it out here.
This is my thought process, and to some people I've explained it to. It makes no sense, but I think you would understand it, and the majority of the Knicks fans would understand it as well. My head tells me that the Knicks are going to win this game. My heart tells me they're going to lose it. Usually it's the other way around. I believe within me that they'll win tonight, but I feel that they'll lose. I think we've been through so much suffering, and the Celtics have been so successful making 6 of the last 8 Eastern Conference Finals. This is nothing new to them. Advancing to the conference finals is death taxes at this point, them making the conference finals. For us, it obviously hasn't happened in 25 years. I tend to agree that we're due, but at the same time, what I saw in Game 5 was very concerning. I don't think that Derek White is going to be able to shoot, hit his first 4 threes and come out that hot. But, I need to see adjustments. Before we end this, what is your biggest adjustment the Knicks need to make tonight? I'll give mine, and then we'll wrap.
Look, I think that I think the keys here, right? And granted, this might not even be something that the Knicks players themselves can control, but I do think that it's concerning that the Celtics, right, in a basketball game, each team is inevitably going to go on a run, right? It's a game of runs. So in the first half last game, right, it was very tight. There was a lot of back and forth. They played them close, right? The Celtics go out on that run to start the third quarter, and it really all started with Kornet. There was no adjustment to what Kornet was bringing to the game. He had 7 blocks. He was dominating on the boards. He was rim running, and Kornet's a guy who historically has a bit of a 3-point shot, so you have to respect him back there too. Stretch the floor a little bit. I think it's just limiting the sequences of bad runs, right? When the Celtics first started going on a run, I remember there was a play where it's before the camera could even pan back, right? The Josh Hart's chasing a ball that's going out of bounds on the sideline, and it's just stuff like that, right? It's when the run happens, the answer has to be a little bit better. And it also kind of just seemed right, there's times I don't know. I mean, it just seemed like Mikal was a little bit hesitant at times to make a play, and that it seemed like the offense at certain points was stagnant. Granted, I don't know NBA and offensive sets and stuff like that enough to make a definitive assessment, but just from what I experienced, the shot quality in the second half of the basketball game was terrible. And it seemed like the Celtics were getting the easiest looks. They were getting, when they weren't hitting on the easy looks, they were getting a lot of second chances, high shot percentage looks, and then it seemed like the Knicks were struggling for absolutely everything. Obviously, Brunson, the foul trouble was, doomed them, and Cat had some foul trouble in the first half, which didn't necessarily hurt them because Mitch Rob has been playing so well. But look, I think, you run that game, you run the circumstances back tonight, the guys are going to come out. Jalen Brunson is an exceptional basketball player. He's on a different level than everyone else on that court. Maybe Jaylen Brown is kind of there with him. I think that there's a gap between Brunson and Jaylen Brown pretty significant. And this is just a spot. It's Game 6 of the semifinals against, a hated rival at home. These are spots, right? It's I don't want to do the cross sport comparisons here, but it's Francisco Lindor in the NLDS, bases loaded. Certain guys, Soto against the Guardians, there's countless moments in sports history where you can look back and you can say you
got to get to that point, though. You got to get to that point where you have a chance. You know what I mean? Jalen Brunson can only operate within the last 4 or 5 minutes. The game is close. you can't spend an entire quarter playing iso ball and, having Josh Hart set screens, but no one respects Josh Hart whatsoever for him to pop. There's no question that he's going to roll. That's the thing. I don't know. I obviously have a lot of points to make, and I'll do that later before, my pregame. But I've got two simple things. And one of them is to get Karl-Anthony Towns going early. Like, you need to set off-ball screens. He needs to be the one setting the screens. He needs to be picking and popping, picking. Like, I need to see that. It's too much of Josh Hart. Again, it was no shot. Number two, and I think this is the most important, Mitchell Robinson needs to start. He needs to play the first few minutes of every single quarter. You need to optimize the amount of time he's on the court. Everyone says that he's the X factor in the series. You're playing your X factor 7 minutes in a second half? Really? You're gonna play a guy who's 6 for 6 from the line, who had 11 rebounds, 6 offensive rebounds in that first half. 7 minutes in the second? Like, it makes no sense to me. It never will. Sometimes with Tom Thibodeau's rotations, but again, we'll see. Well, I'll discuss it later on a pregame show. If you tune into that, I don't usually do stuff Friday nights. I've got other stuff going on, but this is the one thing that's the most important. But Gabe, dude, it was a pleasure. Congratulations again on becoming a contributor for Metsmerized. I'm very much looking forward to reading some of those articles, man.
Thank you, Bryce. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, as always.
All right. We'll talk soon, man. Peace.